Do we want to have like a McDavid kind of scoring a goal at the beginning of this one? Yeah, with some Oilers, with the Oilers intro. Remember that one?
Maybe.
What's that song again? Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode McDavid episode 97. Who do we have?
Kevin Butler.
Michael Turksani.
That's it.
All
Episode
right.
97.
97. We're almost to the 100s.
We're inching our way closer to 100.
Inching, a slow inch off. All right, what are we talking about? Ideation,
creative ideas, bringing new juice to old ideas.
Right. So we're talking about this concept that marketing teams should be, exploring new things, opening their eyes to new opportunities, not just driving the same old program, obviously not being super reckless and just, throwing the baby out with the bathwater and going, in all kinds of different directions. But how do you infuse a level of creativity, exploring, areas that maybe you haven't explored before? Could they now be valuable to you? Hey, we haven't really touched SEO for a while. We didn't really think it was a big deal, haven't been working on it, but maybe that is something. So you have to have cycles to sort of explore that type of thing and bring to your management, bring to your sales organization and your business just ideas. Hey, we think we could try this. Here's kind of why we think it may or may not work. Here's what so let's go do that. So as an agency, people get excited about, I think that's partly like why you hire an agency is they come in, they bring fresh ideas. Even if you have tactical work to do, you're kind of expecting almost that they're going to bring, they're not order takers. You're not just, hey, just do my thing. You're like sort of expecting that there's a level of creativity and thought behind what they're doing and ideation. Certainly if you're hiring them to be a strategic part of your marketing, like a lot of our clients, well, then absolutely they're expecting. And then,
but even on a tactical level, I think they're still expecting that. And the reason is,
I agree.
You come in with a fresh view. You don't know how things have been done in the past, and perhaps there's a better way to do a very tactical thing. And I think clients, whether they vocalize it or not, probably do expect that.
I think they do. I think you're hiring what would be considered expertise. Right.
Exactly.
Hey, we're not experts in landscaping. We're expecting you to help us understand how to lay this out. Like, what do we know? Mm-hmm. So, I think that's why a lot of times agencies are brought in, they infuse those ideas, those concepts, they do a bunch of work, goes really well. Hopefully it goes well. And then over the course of time, could you be in a situation where your agency starts to fall into a similar pattern as some of your own internal marketing people where they're kind of just doing the same stuff.
Right.
There's not necessarily that new juice or those new ideas coming into the fray. I think that absolutely that could be the case. I mean, we've seen that sometimes that's why people change agencies.
Yeah. And I think the concept of innovation that you're talking about comes in sort of two facets. One would be, can we change or innovate, even on a small level, something that we're doing today? And then the second part is, should we be doing something new, net new, right? So maybe there's a different way to do email. There's a different way to do SEO. We typically do that as far as how we normally deploy a regular standard program. Mm-hmm. But maybe there's this new thing we got to do. Hey, we got to really start spending more time on YouTube videos for ads, right? Or, okay, well, that's interesting. That's new. So that's the two ways to look at that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you're in an internal role, you're not always, you don't have the same mindset around like driving profitability, let's say, right? So in an agency environment, agencies are looking at, well, we want to try to build some efficiency so we can drive some profitability, right? So if that means, hey, we found ways in which through a rinse and repeat process to tackle the business as usual emails or the types of ad groups that have been running now for 2 years, and they're kind of going really well, and we've really nailed that process down so we can eke out a little bit of value. You don't see that a lot. Like, you'll see a bit of that internal, but a lot of times you'll see a place where, well, we don't have the scale or the expertise to really do that. So, hey, we're chopping things up. We're kind of manually addressing a lot of that stuff over time. Again, not giving us extra bandwidth to think about, well, maybe there's a new area that I could get into. I'm so bogged down I can't, right? The flip side is, agencies can become complacent. Hey, now we've got all this efficiencies. We've figured out how to run this client top to bottom. It's been a year and a half, technically doing a good job. Like, they're happy, we're happy. But then it's like, are you as a team, like you said, right from the lowest levels, are you coming back to them with ideas? Or you're saying, hey, this is going pretty well. It's been 2 years now. We've got a little bit of ideas that we've put forward, or our team has been thinking about other ways to address this, right? Or try new things.
Yep. So much there. Certainly how I operate as a strategist and how I encourage our teams, whether you're a strategist, account lead, project manager, it doesn't matter, is it's got to be led with curiosity. And to me, for me, it's like per meeting, but if you go several weeks without asking your clients questions, that's a bit of a miss, because something doesn't make sense, or like you should be clarifying something. And to a degree, you're doing so because you're probably thinking about something, an idea or something. Doesn't mean all of your ideas have to be amazing, but it means you're just curious about kind of really drilling into the whys and the whats. And I think that's the first part. And for any organization considering working with agencies, I would be measuring, well, how curious are they? How many questions are they asking about my business?
Right.
Because if they're not asking any questions, they're probably not plugged in and engaged, and it's going to lead to that, what you were describing as same old, same old.
I would double down on that and say that, because we were talking about this a little bit before we started, that you tend to see a lot of activity in the sales process. When you're engaging an agency, and probably are a lot of questions asked, right? Oh, there's a lot of really good things here. Instantaneous kind of ideations happening, close the deal, right? I'd almost look at what process exists in your agency. This is what we were talking about in a year from now, throughout the year. What processes do you guys have to, check all those balances? You can't have one strategist is like really strong, and then the other strategist forgets to ask, and then this account lead kind of has a really great checklist on things that, but this one doesn't know a lot about that, so it doesn't ask questions. So, yeah, to me, that's like really part of the scalability of our organization, and the scalability of this concept of innovation, and is like making sure that those steps aren't missed, is that those like we force those questions to happen multiple times throughout the year.
Yep.
And yeah, maybe there's nothing else to do. Like, maybe they realize, hey, we don't have that, but thanks for asking. I'm glad you guys ask. It's a good thing that you do ask 3 or 4 times a year in a structured way, so we can be exposed to all the things that you guys have potentially. Oh, SMS, you know what? Yeah, maybe we should look at that next year. Not this year, but maybe next year. Okay, cool. Well, we'll think about that, right?
Those questions are so crucial, not because they potentially result in like upsells and additional sales conversations, but I find even if there's no interest or no need, it's the conversation that it unravels or sort of unearths.
Right.
And then I learned something entirely new about the business I never would have if I just stuck to the scope and exactly what we're talking about and getting better and more efficient at whatever it is that we are currently doing. And it's like the client didn't think to mention it before, and I never thought to ask, and then right? But whenever you talk with these, well, what are you doing for text? Well, we would never do text, and this is why, because in our industry, and then you're like, oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
And part of that response can infuse how you're addressing the sort of normal program that we were talking about as well. So even in like that example, there's still a level of sort of incremental improvement or minor innovation that would occur because you ask those questions. Now, just going back to the other point, you're right. We've tried to create a process whereby, generally speaking, the experience is the same across the organization, whether it's someone dealing with me, another strategist, with you. It's personalities will be different, and some personalities just match with client personalities better.
Yeah.
But we've always said we don't want to have such a drastic experience from one person to another, where it's like, oh, if you don't work with Bob, it'll never work there.
Right.
That would always be like kind of a failure. So to that point, though, I wouldn't expect people to operate necessarily exactly how I do. But I think my clients will tell you, you're not getting out of a strategy meeting without me asking like 100 questions.
Right.
I ask way more questions than they ask me. But it's usually with the goal of trying to better understand their business, their operations, so that then I can actually be valuable and creative and coming up with ideas. I'd say my hit rate on ideas is probably like under 30%.
Sure.
But I'm not really too worried about that. I'm more worried about how many things am I thinking about, because eventually one of them will stick.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times the ideas that I have, those aren't the things that we implement. But it's that very conversation started as a result, and then we got somewhere really good.
Sure.
And
It
that's
was the brainstorming of something that maybe turned out to be not, okay, that's not really 100% what we would go with, but as a build on that in the room, then you guys make progress. 100%.
That's kind of the magic, right? I think your goal as a strategist isn't to nail the pitch right off the bat.
Right.
Ideally, but this just isn't, it's not practical all the time. I think your goal though is, can you surface conversations that lead to something? The client's going to decide whether he or she wants actually to do that in the end, but you should be the one starting these conversations.
I think, yeah, where you also have an opportunity around segmentation, I think, that's also where we've got a big advantage in digital now, right? Is that some people look at their segments quite large, quite broad, and they say, well, actually, like if we were to maybe zero in on this sliver, still 20,000 people in this state or province, and it's still like a decent chunk here. It's certainly worth going after as its own content strategy, as its own campaign. So that's another thought, is like, you've got so many personas, if you will, right now that you're working with, and some concepts, right? You say, well, what if we segment this down? What if we broke this one out and tried to do something a little bit more specific? Or maybe you've got segments in the business data that's like, hey, we've got customers that meet this buying habit criteria, and we actually want to try to influence them more so than the others. Now you're getting like, oh, okay, there's, that's another idea. You might do a very similar tactic that you've already executed on before, but you're segmenting and you're changing messaging. So I think to the extent that, you have, I think, a rinse and repeat process that looks at, call them channels, call them technologies, whatever you want to call them, SMS, you're going through a list of things on a regular basis, and the client has a chance to look at something, let's say like, let's say it is a text message thing, right? We can't really see where that would apply. I think then part of the role of the agency is to say, well, we actually took a lightweight look at this, and here's how we think it could apply, right? So you have your checklist where you're going through those channels and ideas, but then you're marrying that with someone that knows about the client, right?
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens. But even in that example, right? So you go to a client, you suggest, well, what about text messaging? And the client might say, oh, I'm not comfortable there. I think the really important part right then is say, because this is what I'm thinking, and this is what text messaging as a executional tactic or channel offers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking we can be more direct, really timely, and maybe have an offer, something like that. And if you start saying that, they say, okay, well, we're not comfortable with text for whatever reason. Doesn't happen in our industry. It's not what we want to do. But maybe you could take those principles or sort of the goals that you thought could be part of texting as this example, and say, well, what if we did that in an email though?
Right.
What if we use some of our ads to be more direct and more about offer-based promotions, like whatever that is? And that's kind of an example of what I was saying before about how the idea itself wasn't what we used, but it was sort of the concept around how we were thinking about it. Well, we can use that as a different way to do something we've been doing before, like email, like, I don't know, websites and landing pages, whatever it is. So I think those conversations are so crucial to trying different things. And we've talked long ago about, in separate podcasts, about how you'd want to try to, if you can, isolate portions of budgets and bandwidth just to try new things. And that's kind of such a great tactical example of how an idea that didn't really fit can still be repurposed into something that's a bit more sort of appropriate in business as usual marketing programs.
Yeah. And I also think it's important for the company, for the business, for the client to have their own, innovation thought process here. Like if you're working with an agency, I think you're not probably gaining the maximal level of advantage here if you're simply showing up to the meeting and waiting for them to, hey, what's the ideas? Well, what do you guys have as terms of that, right? I think, you probably, as an internal, a lot of these internal teams, they get stuck because they can't see the rest of it. But if they can bring kind of, hey, we're bringing a 20% idea here, or more of the business challenge, like, hey, you know what, there is a group of clients here, we're having a tough time scoring them lead, or we're having a hard time dashboarding this particular level of our marketing, or we have a campaign concept that we've always thought about, then the agency can be like, you know what, yeah, with that, let us take that away and actually do some investigation on how we could turn that around to something, right? I think sometimes you get into this place where, and I've seen this a bunch, I know you've seen this a bunch, where the internal people are so busy, they're so bogged down in the day-to-day running of the department and the things that they need to get done, that they kind of just look out to the agency to say, like, what do you have for me? What should we be doing?
I know.
And they're like too low on the innovate. Like, I don't expect you to have all the time in the world to do innovation if you've got an agency partner and you're an internal, but I think you need to also go through your own checklist, and then I think that's when we've had a lot of success, when clients are kind of meeting us part of the way there, right? And we're able to collaborate on ideas more broadly.
Yeah, I feel for our clients, because in a lot of cases, some of the stuff that they're tasked with that they have to do have nothing to do with results-based marketing. It's like internal comms. It's
right.
Like, and it's not to say those aren't important, but those don't drive leads and revenue.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to do all kinds of admin level stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just things you have to do. And sometimes, like you're describing, they can't get out and be innovative, creative, and think about the next campaign because, man, oh man, there's just a million things on his or her plate. They just got to get through, and it takes time. And they're looking at an agency in a lot of cases as kind of their focus wing of their department, where like that agency can just focus on driving innovation, levels of creativity, and sort of run the program.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we as Goose, as their agency, we don't have to worry about the internal stuff.
Right.
And so I feel for them there. What I would encourage any of the client side is to overshare and over communicate what you're thinking as far as new stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes they hold back and they don't share everything out of fear, like, I don't want to confuse them. I don't want to get them involved in other stuff. But I would encourage them to do that, because that gives me a bit more to work with and think, okay, and just talk through, like, what are the objectives? Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Oh, well, the sales lead says the leads are good, but they're not ready. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, what do we think we could do then in order to change messaging, add more messaging to theoretically more warm them up and ready them? So I think...
Yeah, that's that type of business challenge where...
Why are we trying to do this?
Why are we trying to do it? Yeah, what's actually going on inside the business? Exactly.
Actually, that would be a great process too, if like perhaps monthly, if your primary point of contact on the client side says, once a month, I'm going to do a roundup with my team. What are we seeing, hearing, and feeling? Could be related specifically to new inbound leads, could be active ops, could be just more general industry and sort of market landscape stuff.
Yep.
And then just be like, here's 4 or 5 bullets once a month, just FYI.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really cool. I would love getting that.
Yeah, that would help from internal. Yeah, for getting that from the client too. Yeah, like, the role, I think, of an agency to be strategic versus, running your kind of BAU. I think that's always been a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to be hiring for the ideation and the innovation? Yes, I do. So maybe I'm going to hold on to a lot of the internal BAU execution internally, but then my internal team, they don't have a lot of time to do some strategic thinking. Like if you're an internal marketing team and you don't have a lot of bandwidth to go explore, AI tools, these other elements, you have your agency bringing ideas. Like there's a bit of a challenge there. I think that we've talked a lot about, as much as it's not sexy to outsource some of that BAU, it's actually probably some of the most cost-effective stuff to outsource, because an agency probably is able to do that work very efficiently.
Yeah.
They're experts at these tools. They know how to run them. And if you're spending a lot of time, running internal comms programs, doing a bunch of like standard, kind of BAU type program work, you might be able to shave a whole bunch of time by leveraging the agency, still get some strategic support from them, but free yourself up to be more of a strategic marketer and think about like these business problems, like you just said, like go and think through like where the opportunities, call them, I know they're challenges, but where you think the opportunities may be. We got a certain segment of customer here and it doesn't really repeat as well as like other segments. We can help with that thinking and be collaborative, but if you've got no one on your side that has the bandwidth to even, kind of look at that problem and think about that problem, like that's really difficult at that point.
I think I agree with that 85% of the time.
Yeah.
I do think some of it's going to come down to, well, what's the complexity of the industry? What's the internal skill sets and strengths within your team, as well as like the skill sets of the agency, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think speaking for any strategist, there's just some accounts that you just naturally connect with better. You just understand that space. Perhaps you've got a background in that industry, or maybe it's just an easier space, right? Less regulatory, less like whatever. So it's all going to depend on the relationship, because and maybe your strategist is highly creative and you say, well, okay, she's way more creative than I am as the client side leader. So maybe I can actually focus a bit more on BAU because I'm getting a lot of creative output from her.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think what you're really saying is you have to have an answer for a level of like constant creativity and innovation. It doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe it's like one new idea a quarter or like whatever. You have to have an answer for that, as well as how do I sort of most efficiently get through the regular program.
Right.
And you got to have the right balance. I would be thinking about that as I'm sizing up the next agency that I want to work with, if I'm client side. But I think you just have to have answers for that. I think sometimes the client side, they don't think about that. And maybe they don't even say the expectation, what they're thinking for the agency. And it turns out after a year, you've done some good work. But like, yeah, I haven't really said a lot of innovation. And the agency's like, I didn't realize we were the creative arm here.
Yeah.
So I think that conversation is crucial as well.
Yeah. And the programs that you run, I also think there's a dynamic of like, not so much if it's not broke, don't fix it, but there's probably a natural level of like the amount you're going to get out of your effort, right? Like if you're going to go reboot a newsletter program, it's like you really have to understand the business objectives there. If it's performing reasonably well and it's achieving your goals from getting your messaging out to your audience, are you going to go invest a whole pile of time rebooting that from a creative perspective and all this kind of, and build a whole content strategy around it? Like you have to look at the return on investment of that type of activity, right? So that might be an idea, but at the end of the day, geez, like our newsletter, we've got 60% open rates. Like we got a ton of engagement already. We rebranded it 2 years ago. It seems to be working. Like when I look at the priority list, that's probably actually low on the list. So I think the strategist and the agency and the internal, you want to have, some level of understanding of like what the return on investment's going to be, right?
How much better can it get?
Exactly.
In that example, it's like, those sound like amazing metrics. So really, if we go and sink a whole ton of time and bandwidth, can it really improve?
And I think that's part of the agency's role, like stepping up and saying, look, hey, we're happy to do it. You guys are gung ho to do it. You've got all the reasons to do it. Absolutely, we'll do it. But also just as a sounding board, when I'm seeing your other priorities here, this is actually in pretty good shape. Like, I don't know if we want to necessarily like tackle that right now. I've seen, similar situations where people want to go in and reinvigorate a program. And it's like, the sales numbers against that program are today X. And even if you were to double or triple that number, we're talking about a small number. We're talking in the big picture of what we're trying to achieve right now. It's a tiny number. So like, yeah, cool. You're rebooting a referral program or whatever, and yeah, you probably will triple the sales on it. But at the end of the day, it's like such a small number that maybe we should be looking at these other aspects that are bigger problems to solve. So that's where I think, it's less about the channel. It's less about, hey, is it video? Have you done video before? And that's where you marry it with someone either through the strategist, like you're saying, where we've got a lot of knowledge here already and we kind of know your business, / somebody inside the company that can say, okay, yes, I can see how this type of strategy would marry to this type of audience or this type of business challenge, right?
Right. So before I was saying the client side individual should be kind of over communicating and saying, this is what we're trying to do. Here's our objectives, kind of like an internal roundup of feedback. I think on the other side too, and this is probably something we can continue to adopt in our process, is the account lead or the strategist, one or the other, should maybe monthly as well be sharing, here's some of the cool stuff we've seen on the Goose side.
Yeah.
The agency side. You don't have to share names, numbers, or anything like that, but, we had this client in a totally different industry and they did this.
Yeah.
And I think it's all about conversation, just sourcing ideas and seeing what's happening. And, I could see the client saying, well, we wouldn't really do that, but we'd be comfortable with something like that. And again, it just starts that conversation, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
I definitely think we could do that as well. But just that's, I think, part of what clients, whether they say it directly or not, are expecting from any agency is you have a perspective across all kinds of industries and clients, different sizes of businesses. Like, download that to us so we can benefit from all of the additional exposure and advantages that you have, because they only really see the one lane.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't know if that's great or not great. I had a session with a client earlier this week, and we were talking about remarketing and display click-through. And they were sort of sitting there saying, oh, it's okay. Like, I guess that's okay. And I was like, these are off the charts good, comparatively speaking. And to them, they just didn't know, because that's all they've ever kind of seen. But historically, their performance is so above average that they're like, oh, I guess it's okay. It's like, no, like any other business would take this in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So with that perspective, I think.
Yeah. So that exactly. So then it's like, are we going to go and throw a whole bunch of time in that process? You're like, no, because we're already seeing really solid numbers from there. Certainly aligning to your sales plan, to the extent that you can bring your agency into your sales, not so much the sales planning process. That is a great thing you can do, invite them out to the sales kickoffs and stuff like that, but more around, hey, I can see these segments. You've got 6 kind of core areas, and I can tell the revenue numbers associated with those core areas. Like, even think of our business plan, right? We know this year, we're on a calendar year, we know by revenue source exactly our priorities. Somebody wanted to go pour a whole bunch of, effort into this one partner that we're trying to get off the ground. Let's say it's only going to bring in, X, and then we've got other lines here that are X times 10. Yeah. It's like, well, wait a sec, like we've got a misbalance of sort of like our resource associated with that. So I think that's another way you can kind of get that. Hey, why are you guys going after this XYZ? Well, because we've had, unfortunately, like we've had some churn in this specific area. Sales is actually trying to bolster that. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yep.
How can we look at wrapping around that problem? Right. Maybe that is a higher priority in some ways than some of the other stuff that we might be on, or even if it's just ideation and strategy development and none of the tactical execution, that could really bring the relationship together with saying, yeah, you guys are helping us solve like a core sales problem that we have right now.
Oh, totally. I think I was even just thinking too, like if I were client side and I was hiring an agency for a 1-year retainer, I think one of the sort of soft metrics I would have, it's not make or break, but certainly one of the goals I would have would be, I'd like to see the agency facilitate some kind of like 3 different innovations throughout the year.
Yeah.
I expect nothing in quarter 1 because you're getting up to speed and learning our business. And they don't have to be like sort of massive home runs each time, but I would like to see 3, kind of 1 per quarter for quarters 2, 3, and 4 respectively, where it's like you have, again, it doesn't have to be your idea, but you have to have facilitated a conversation that led to some kind of innovation, big or small. And I think that should come from a lot of the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I like the word facilitation because I think ultimately that is the role. Like when we talk about pulling these things out of a customer, it really comes through, like you said, that questioning. What's the line of questioning at a minimum viable level for the strategy session 3 times a year that makes sure you cover off this stuff, like whether it's, like again, customer service challenges or sales stuff or, other bigger picture business market dynamic stuff. These are lines of questioning that, again, facilitate the conversation, right? Allow you to kind of make your way through that process. So it's less about, hey, these are these are areas of digital marketing or channels or mediums, right? I think it's that comes into play, but I think it's the other line of questioning that you're talking about to really like facilitate, whoa, okay, now we found something here that you guys actually think is worth investing some marketing dollars around. It happens to be a display remarketing plus a bit of this we think would be a really good way to, at least at a high level, we'll take it away, we'll come back. So I really like that. I think that's, if you're looking to get into a longer term agency partner, which I think is like probably a good way to differentiate, a short-term agency, I just need to get some stuff done, versus, hey, I'm actually like kind of relying on you over a period of time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Yep. I think, asking again, we all get excited in the sales process. They asked a bunch of great questions. We got the deal done. What do you guys do from a strategic innovation kind of perspective? What's your process? Oh, I'm glad you asked. In fact, we were going to tell you anyway. And here it is. We have these 3 times a year things. We really engage to facilitate a business conversation about how we can do more for you. If we're doing our job, our role is becoming more and more efficient over time, freeing us up to do more and more of this, right?
And then you're just operating as a true partner as opposed to an order taker, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But I would say, I don't know what percentage, like maybe like 20% of the time I'll ask questions and the person on the other end, unfortunately, is like, oh God, I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to go check that because, hey, I should know that. I don't actually know that. Yeah. So it's beneficial on both sides for sure.
And I think it's like less, I think there's and maybe this is changing. I don't know, you might know, but like, there's certainly in our bull run there, you saw a lot of turnover, a lot of marketing heads that would come in for the short period of time of their strategy, and then they would leave. And oftentimes the agency, oh, well, that was just part of their program. So the agency's now gone. We'll get a new agency. We'll get this person doesn't like agencies. Okay. Our next new person doesn't like agencies. We'll build an internal. A lot of turnover, a lot of stuff that was attached, sort of like, hey, this person's going to come in and grow our business. And 2 years, that didn't really work out, or whatever happened, they're now on to the next thing. I feel like there's probably more. Those are the ones we see. Those are the like, the CMOs, the companies that are really in the tech space are part of that bull run that we saw a lot of. But equally, we've got, I would say there's way more companies out there that are probably, like, I would say the norm is, yeah, no, my people are going to be here for a while. Like, yeah, she's been here for 10 years and he's been here for 15 years running marketing. We don't really, we're not looking to like blow the doors off here in some sort of like hockey stick, level of growth in 2 years. Well, it's like, let's just continue to grow our business over time. So what I'm saying is that probably layers into the right type of marketing fit for if you're looking for a long-term partner, understanding their strategy process, their partnering process, like you said, really, yeah, I've been here for 10 years. I plan on being here for another 10 years. I think find that agency that also has a long-term vision.
Right. Great call out. I do think we've seen an evolution there. I think the days of growth at all costs have gone away. Mm-hmm. And what was associated with that was bringing in a business leader, marketing leader that has his or her program. Mm-hmm. Included in that is huge spend, budgets for staff, for agencies. Tech. It's all associated to that tech. Good one. It's all associated to that person. So, okay, it's not working out. That person moves on, then just cut the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Now I think what you're seeing, it's more like responsible growth, or like, growth via profitability, or at least something resembling profitability. Mm-hmm. It's more pronounced or like deliberate. And as a result, I think organizations are selecting technologies, people, agencies for the company program rather than the individual's program. So there are cases where our relationship with the organization will outlive the initial person who brought us in, because the synergies are aligned. We represent on a long-term basis where that org's trying to go. And, that director of marketing left, or that VP of marketing left, greener pastures, whatever, it's fine, because we're still there and we're holding a level of stability for that program while they figure out what they want to do with that head and resource, right?
Right.
So, I think it's changed a little bit. And certainly that scenario I just played out, we've seen a bunch, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in some client cases, I think we're on like leader 3 over like a 6-7 year period.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just kind of the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think that is like part of the insight here. And, I think it's an exciting time, I think, to be, in a firm, in an agency environment that is looking to, which is our goal, really to expand these long-term relationships. We're happy with short-term projects. We love them, people have needs, they got to get it done. But, I think that we're just seeing a really great development in more efficient, agency to client kind of engagements, things that aren't costing huge money to get involved and get stuff done. Like you said, more responsible marketing, they're not just like blowing their brains out. And I think a longer term vision is now being established. Like, how are we looking at this thing over the course of, a couple of years? And if we're going to have that type of vision, well, then, yeah, it needs to be close to profitability, if you want to call it that. A lot of our clients that we work with, like, we're monitoring that really closely. It's not to slow down growth. I mean, I don't think anybody's sitting here being like, well, you're not being aggressive enough. You need to be, 0.5 ROAS because you got to like blow your, you just got to go get all the business you can. Yeah, there's a place for that. Like, maybe there's companies out there that are being that aggressive. We know there's been a pullback, but I think it's like, no, we can do this and we can try to grow this over time and do it the right way. I think it just leads to a much more sustainable program overall for these organizations.
Yep.
All right. We're good.
I think we're good.
Good job. Until next time, we'll be at episode 98. Who's 98? McDavid was 97.
Bedard.
Yeah,
he's pretty good.
He's pretty good too?
Yeah, he's pretty good.
All right, we'll do that one next. Do we want to have like a McDavid kind of scoring a goal at the beginning of this one? Yeah, with some Oilers, with the Oilers intro. Remember that one?
Maybe.
What's that song again?
I forget what they come out to.
Huh?
I forget.
No, not what they come out to. It's like the Go Oilers Go or whatever that radio song was. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Harsh will figure it out. All right. Thanks, guys. Till next time.